What's up, gamer? Koobs here. Today we're taking a look at Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt. This is a free-to-play game in the Battle Royale genre. It's exclusive to PlayStation 5 and PC, and I've been enjoying my time with it so far, so I figured I'd put together a quick video talking about some of the things that the game's doing right, maybe some of its shortcomings, let you know if this is something that maybe you want to get into yourself. So thanks so much for being here. To start off, we choose where we'd like to spawn in. The map is always the same. We're playing in the city of Prague, and so you can choose your spawn location. For this specific match, I had a little side quest, had an item that I was looking to go pick up somewhere on the map, so that kind of helped determine where I was going to start. They also kind of give you an indication of what other players are starting nearby, so you can kind of have an idea of whether or not you're going to be close to somebody right off of the bat, or if, you know, maybe you're going to have a little bit more wiggle room to load up with your loot at the start of the match. You also get started by choosing an archetype, and there are 9 to choose from, each of which have different unique skills and passive abilities. In this game, we're playing as the Saboteur, so we have one ability that allows us to vanish, and we get a little bit of a speed boost. And then our other ability is a kind of a gas mine that we can throw down, and if an enemy comes within proximity, it'll explode, doing some damage, and it also lets you know, sort of, that somebody's nearby. So I like this character in particular because it's got a little bit more of a stealth vibe to it. Each of the 9 archetypes also have a passive skill or ability, and so the Saboteur, if I crouch in place for a few seconds, then I can turn invisible in that way as well. I enjoy the archetype class system that they have put together. It allows you to really augment your own personal play style, which I think is kind of nice. If you enjoy just run and gun as your, typical style of engagement, there are different archetypes that reinforce that play style. Personally, I like to kind of hide in the shadows a little bit and take advantage when I can, and so the Saboteur allows me to do that. Definitely good choice on their part to have all of these different diverse classes to choose from. As you level up in a specific archetype, you can also unlock a different perk. So basically you get to choose one perk for your character. Starting out, I think it's just something simple like you carry more ammo. You can get things like faster reload speed, faster climbing speed. Maybe one lets you take less damage when you're in the red smoke, or maybe it's rather that it doesn't affect you as early, so like you can stand in the red mist a little bit longer before you start taking damage. The one that I'm using in this particular game allows me to start with 2 of the purple, what they call it, resonances. So basically the way that resonances work is as you're exploring the world, gathering all of your loot, you'll come across NPC civilians, and the civilians have a chance to have a specific kind of like a blood type, and based on that blood type, it'll allow you to bolster one of your different traits, if you will. So there's blue, purple, pink, and yellow. The blue is going to be your typically like your combat skill. So for this character, it's my gas mine. It'll decrease the cooldown of that specific skill. The purple is going to augment your, I typically consider it a movement ability, but I think it's actually called like your archetype skill, and so that in this instance is my vanish ability. And with this particular loadout, I start with 2 notches in the purple resonance, so that gives me, I think, like a 25% cooldown boost to using my vanish ability, which is pretty nice because I think that that's one of the highlights of this class personally. And then the pink is going to be a passive HP regen, so if you can get that all the way up to 3, then you get about 3 health per second. And then lastly we have the yellow, kind of like an orange tint to it, and that's going to be your melee damage, and you can get that up to, I believe, 50% bonus melee damage, which is kind of nice. In the background we can see there's different vans that you can come across. So there's a police van, which will give you some ammo and some armor. There's also like a EMS ambulance that'll give you some health regen items, and then there's a red van that you can find that's always going to give you 2 different weapons. And I like that as well because you know what you're going to get when you approach these certain items. There are also like these golden keys, and you can use the golden key to unlock a golden chest, and that'll give you, pretty sure it's a guaranteed purple or gold rarity weapon. And then there's also these safes that you can find around the map, and the safe will give you kind of like an artifact or a relic that's going to do some specific thing for you. One of them I found decreases your cooldowns even further. There's one that helps you with basically a double jump ability, and another one that can make you turn invisible when you're just kind of roaming the streets. So each of those is kind of nice as well. Talking about the NPCs, there are some bots that you come across in your matchups. I think that kind of happens naturally. They're trying to fit 42 different combatants into each match. And so if the player count's a little bit lower, typically you're going to have maybe about half of the players in the match are going to be bots. I've found some of them vary quite a bit in their ability of skill. Some, when you start a gunfight with them, they'll just kind of stand still and more or less let you kill them. Others I've found are like bloodhounds that just, they know exactly where you're at, and even when you've been downed and you're hiding in a bush and you think that you're safe, they can sniff you out and take you out. So that's kind of, hit or miss, just kind of depending on the AI tuning, I guess. But going along with that, one of the things I definitely should talk about before we get too far ahead of ourselves is the fact that this game is also kind of known for having a lot of cheaters. And, being a free-to-play game, it's open to anybody to hop into. And unfortunately, when the game launched, there was no anti-cheat built into the game. I don't know how that has been updated or how it's progressed as the game has continued to live on, but it does seem like sometimes you'll come across people who are just maybe a little more supernatural than the rest of us vampires, if you know what I mean. Sometimes it seems like they know exactly where you're at, or their aim is just really freaking good, whatever it might be. So you got to kind of keep an eye out for that. Now, on screen here, I'm what's known as blood hunted. So for all of my enemies, I'm highlighted in red, and I think they also see a little indication on the mini-map. That's occurred because I accidentally shot one of the civilians when I was shooting at one of the other players. So the whole idea of the Masquerade is that as vampires, we've kind of agreed not to do anything in public that would let the civilians know that there are vampires amongst them. So if you are caught feeding on a civilian by another civilian, or if you accidentally shoot or kill a civilian, then you'll be blood hunted, and that lasts for about 40 seconds, where all your opponents know exactly where you're at. So that's kind of an added layer of challenge to the game. You got to be kind of careful in that regard, because if you're blood hunted, it definitely makes things a lot more challenging for you to survive. You might have also noticed that we got downed there, and instead of being eliminated outright, we're given a respawn. So you start with 1 respawn, and then you can also feed on specific NPC civilians in order to gain your respawn back. You'll find that they have a red resonance compared to some of the other colored resonances that you can find. And if you can safely feed on that civilian, then you can gain your respawn wave back. I really like this mechanic as it allows you to have sort of like a secondary objective when you're playing the game. So even though you've been downed, it's like, I'm still in it. I'm just going to try to find another respawn wave, gear back up, and then continue to take on gunfights so I can try to win. Going back to discussing the cheating side of things once again, really briefly, I try not to judge people. I'd rather try to understand where they're coming from. It's difficult to understand why somebody would want to cheat in a free-to-play game like this. Like, what do they get out of it? And so I don't really hate on those people, more so than I just sort of feel bad for them. They weren't good enough at the game with their own skill, or they didn't feel like they could just improve at the game through some practice and actually working to be better at something, so they turn on these cheats. so that they can win, and whatever sort of satisfaction they feel from that. Personally, I feel like it would be kind of empty. It's like an empty victory. It's like I took first place, but was it really me that did it? So I don't really know where they're coming from in that regard, but that might be something that sort of turns you away from getting into this game. It might deter you from sinking a lot of time into the game, and that's just sort of a bummer overall. I can certainly understand that if you're like, hey, game's got a lot of cheaters. Anytime that I play the game, I feel like I'm coming across somebody who's playing unfairly, and so I don't really feel like spending my time with that game. I'd rather go play something else of a similar genre. Totally understand that. One of the things that I did like about the game that sort of rewarded my time was that there's this Primus Pass, kind of like the equivalent to a Battle Pass in many of the other games of this similar genre, free-to-play games. I don't know if it's always a free Primus Pass, but at least for the current season that they have going on, it's completely free. And so that has rewarded me with different customization options. So like the outfit that my character is wearing right now was something that I unlocked from the Primus Pass. And then they also give you coins, which is like the in-game currency. And so as you continue to level up in the Primus Pass, they'll give you the ability to pick out some custom items from the shop for yourself. I do think that with these sort of games, their pricing, like the valuation of their in-game currency, is always really kind of questionable to me. I'm not somebody who puts money into these sort of free-to-play games, but it just feels like if you were to spend money on the in-game currency, on the coins, it's like $10 for like 1,000 coins, and that might not even get you, one of the rare items for your character to wear. So sometimes it's just like maybe if they had lowered the cost of the coins or given you more coins for your dollar, maybe they would have more success in that regard. So keep an eye out for those sorts of things if that's something that you use to kind of determine whether or not you're going to invest in a game. That's totally up to you. But again, so we've got that respawn wave, helped us stay in the game. Looks like we're down to the last 7 combatants, so not doing too bad in that regard. Matches are fairly quick, 10-15 minutes at most, and queue times aren't too bad. Maybe a minute or two to get into a match is the longest that I've waited. Sometimes it's you get into one right away, so that's been kind of nice as well. There's solos, duos, and trios when it comes to the Blood Hunt mode, and then there's also a team deathmatch that you can get into that's 3-on-3. And it's there's a timer, and whoever has the most points at the end of the timer is victorious. So some fun game modes to check out. Overall, I think that the gunplay is nice and fun, different weapons to choose from. I'm a fan of the light machine gun. That's probably one of my favorite weapons, but the shotguns feel really good, and nice variety there. The abilities are fun. Each of the different archetypes, like I mentioned, has unique abilities to work with, and I think that adds a lot to the replay value of the game. Even once you've kind of mastered one specific archetype, you can go check out some of the other ones and see how they play and see how things are different between the two, or between the 9, if you will. And movement's really great. It's fluid. There's a lot of skill that can go into mastering mobility in this game. You can kind of slide down walls, bounce off walls. You have your skill that you can use. Like some of them have a leap, some have a levitation ability. So when you throw those into the mix, you can kind of really start bouncing all over the place and getting some momentum going. So that's been cool too. So I would say overall it's a fun, enjoyable game. Free to play, so there's not much to lose. Like I mentioned, there are some downfalls, with the cheaters and things like that, so that might be something that really kind of prevents you from getting into this game. But if you're looking for something, fresh and free to check out, I definitely recommend it. Spend half an hour with it here or there and just enjoy yourself. If you don't take things too serious, and I don't think that cheaters are plaguing every single match that I get into. It's really, 1 out of every 5 or so that I come across somebody that's like, hey, don't think that that's you behind that controller who's hunting me down like that. So if you can overlook that, I would definitely say it's worth putting some time into and enjoying it. Cool concept, cool aesthetic, nice character customization, different things like that. So check this one out, gamer. Looks like we're down to the last 2 of us. These sort of gunfights at the end can really get kind of intense. I think as the circle continues to close, there's like a point to capture. Melee's cool too. Bunch of cool melee weapons. Hey, there we go. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Got ourselves a victory for you, gamers. Thanks so much for being here. Hope you've enjoyed. I have been and always will be Coobs. Peace and love.